알갈량이 같은 느낌의 식감이에요. 아삭한 식감을 주는 채소가 있어요. 천사채 무침이 있거든요. 그걸 같이 곁들여서 먹으면 매운맛을 천사채가 잡아주면서 그 뽀드득 씹히는 그 맛이 있어요. 천사채가 잘 어울리는 조합인 것 같아요. 쭈꾸미와 천사채, 깻잎, 양파는 많으면 많을수록 좋다고 생각해요. 거기서 되게 단맛이 나오거든요. 쭈꾸미가 보글보글 끓어오를 때 저는 그때 되게 초조하거든요. 굳이 음악에 비유하자면 왕벌의 비행? 어떻게 생각해보면 외국 분들은 깔라마리랑 조금 비슷하다고 느끼실 수 있을 것 같은데 맛있는 고추장에 버무려서 쭈꾸미의 쫄깃쫄깃함이 만났을 때 그 궁합, 그런 것들이 우리나라 한식에만 딱 있는 식감인 것 같아요. 쭈꾸미 발판을 보면 아이들의 결이 다 살아있거든요. 탱글한 느낌? 매우면서도 매운 걸 참으면서 먹게 되는 그 알싸한 매운맛을 잊을 수가 없는 것 같아요. 저는 완전한 한식파거든요. 이제는 일상에서 저는 정말 항상 소소한 행복을 찾으려고 하거든요. 맛있는 음식을 먹는 거예요. 그게 가장 저를 빠르게 행복하게 해줄 수 있는 길이거든요. 오늘 밤에 왠지 자면서 꿈을 꿀 것 같아요. 어젯밤 꿈속 쭈꾸미 이러면서
In our headlines on this Wednesday, March 18th, here in South Korea, US President Donald Trump angrily asserts the US, quote, does not need the help of anyone as global leaders rebuff his request for warships to secure the Strait of Hormuz from Iran's threats. And in a further escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz back on Tuesday announces the assassination of Iran's top security official Ali Larijani in overnight airstrikes. Meanwhile, here in South Korea, naphtha is designated a strategic economic security item as a prolonged unrest in the Middle East is expected to further challenge its supply chain. US President Donald Trump has rebuked American allies, including South Korea, for their response to his request for warships in the Strait of Hormuz. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young covers his remarks, as well as the first display of dissent within his administration regarding the mission against Iran.
US President Donald Trump lashed out at allies after many refused or held back on his call to send warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. Posting on Truth Social, Trump declared America no longer needs or desires NATO's assistance, and likewise Japan, Australia and South Korea. He stated the US does not need the help of anyone, saying it is, quote, by far the most powerful country anywhere in the world. The outburst came on Tuesday after Trump had spent the previous days pressing allies to send their navies to the Strait of Hormuz, after Iran effectively closed the waterway in retaliation for US-Israeli attacks.
So I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake, and I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
France has drawn the clearest line. President Emmanuel Macron said Paris would never take part in operations to reopen the Strait of Hormuz in the current context, stressing that France was not party to the conflict. Australia's Transport Minister Catherine King bluntly said Canberra will not be sending a ship to the strait. Japan was more guarded but no more willing. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said there had been no decisions whatsoever on dispatching escort ships, and that Tokyo was still considering what it could do within its legal framework. South Korea has said it did not receive an official request, while its lawmakers have indicated a deployment would require legislative approval. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates has shown more openness. A senior Emirati official said on Tuesday that Abu Dhabi could join an international effort to secure the strait. Split reactions are also emerging from within Washington. On Tuesday, Joe Kent, the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, resigned over the war, becoming the first senior Trump official known to quit over the conflict. In his resignation letter, Kent wrote that Iran posed no imminent threat to the US and said he could not support the war in good conscience. 오수영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Israel has announced the assassination of Iran's leading security officials. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
Israel says two of Iran's most senior security figures have been killed in recent airstrikes, marking a major escalation in the ongoing conflict. According to Israeli officials on Tuesday, Ali Larijani, described as Iran's top security official, and Gholam Reza Soleimani, head of the paramilitary Basij force, were killed in separate U.S.-Israeli strikes. Iran has since confirmed the deaths of both men. The Israel Defense Forces said its Air Force carried out what it called a precise strike near Tehran on Monday night that killed Larijani. Israeli officials claimed that following the assassination of former Supreme Leader Ayatollah al-Khamenei in late February, Larijani had effectively taken a leading role in directing Iran's military response against Israel and its regional allies. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps also confirmed the death of Basij commander Gholam Reza Soleimani, describing him as a veteran military leader who played a key role in past conflicts, including the Iran-Iraq War, and in mobilizing public support for the regime. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the killings are part of a broader campaign to weaken what he called Iran's terror-spreading leadership, warning that Israel still has many more surprises ahead.
There is cooperation between our air forces and naval forces between me and President Trump and his people. We will assist both with indirect attacks, which generate immense pressure on the Iranian regime, and with direct actions. There are many more surprises.
Meanwhile, Iran's newly appointed Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, has reportedly rejected international calls for de-escalation. A senior Iranian official said he is demanding that both Israel and the United States be brought to their knees before any negotiations can take place, signaling a hardening stance as tensions continue to rise. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the UAE has reportedly placed South Korea at the top of its priority list for crude oil. This is according to Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Hoon-sik, following a recent trip to the Gulf nation. Our Yoon-jin has the latest.
South Korea has secured an additional 18 million barrels of crude oil from the United Arab Emirates amid growing concerns over global energy markets due to the ongoing Middle East crisis. Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Hoon-sik made the announcement on Wednesday during a press briefing upon returning from his trip to the UAE. Kang said that the UAE promised South Korea as their #1 priority and that the worst-case scenario of an oil supply crisis has been avoided where crude oil supplies are cut off.
Amid a global emergency regarding crude oil supply and demand, the UAE has pledged to prioritize the supply of crude oil to South Korea above all others. No nation shall receive oil supplies ahead of Korea. Korea remains the foremost priority in the oil supply chain. Explicitly, the UAE clearly committed to this partnership, as South Korea is its #1 priority.
6 million barrels of the 18 will be carried by UAE-flagged tankers and 12 million barrels by South Korean vessels. This means, including an earlier agreement of 6 million barrels, South Korea is set to receive a total of 24 million barrels of crude oil from the UAE. Kang also noted that under emergency arrangements between the two countries, South Korea will be able to make emergency purchases of crude oil from the UAE at any time. The two countries have also agreed to sign a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in the supply chain of crude oil, including efforts to explore alternative supply routes. The MOU is expected to be signed in the near future. Kang added that he delivered a letter of appreciation from President Lee Jae-myung to President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for the Emirati leader's full support in ensuring the swift and safe return of South Korean nationals, and asked that continued attention be given to the safety of those still residing in the UAE. Some 3,000 of approximately 3,500 short-term residents in the UAE have returned home safely. 이은진, Arirang News.
Right, President Lee Jae-myung has sent letters of gratitude to foreign leaders for their help in evacuating South Koreans from the Middle East. Among the recipients are Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, Qatar Emir Tamim Al Hamad Al Thani, and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud. Hundreds of South Koreans have returned home this month from Riyadh and Doha on civil and military planes, as well as a Japanese chartered flight. Also, here on the local front, the government is taking tangible action to protect its supply chain of raw materials and related businesses. Our An Sung-jin covers the latest countermeasures.
As tensions prolong in the Middle East, South Korea has been gearing up measures to respond to economic disruptions. Speaking at an emergency economic ministers meeting on Wednesday, Finance Minister Koo Jun-chol stated that South Korea will temporarily designate naphtha, a raw material used by the petrochemical industry, as a strategic economic security item amid growing shortages. Roughly 54% of the country's naphtha imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz, raising concerns over potential bottlenecks.
Timing is critical in responding to a crisis. We will mobilize all available policy tools and closely monitor supply conditions.
This move comes as South Korea seeks to stabilize supply chains, such as securing alternative import routes and implementing export restrictions if necessary, as the Middle East crisis begins to strain not only oil markets, but also broader raw material supply chains. To further address industry concerns, the government also seeks to expand financial support through a new supply chain stabilization fund that offers up to roughly $1 billion for affected companies. Firms heavily reliant on items from the Middle East will also receive preferential loan rates. Koo emphasized that Seoul will also prepare a supplementary budget aimed at easing the pressure on households, small businesses, and key industries. He called for further reductions in fuel prices following the implementation of a government-imposed price cap on petroleum products, and noted that the government will monitor fuel price trends while cracking down on unfair practices such as hoarding. Additional controls such as vehicle use restrictions remain under consideration. Officials have also announced that they have alleviated short-term supply concerns over ethylene, an essential material used in shipbuilding, by coordinating with the petrochemical and shipbuilding industries. Meanwhile, during the same emergency meeting, the finance minister also addressed the United States' initiation of a probe under Section 301 of the U.S. Trade Act. He emphasized that Seoul will respond comprehensively to ensure its industries are not disadvantaged compared to global competitors by establishing a joint public-private response system and systematically responding at the pan-government level. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
In other news now, South Korea posted its largest expansion in employment in 5 months in February, but the gain remained substantially uneven across age brackets. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon explains.
South Korea's job growth rebounded to the 200,000 level in February, but the underlying data reveals severe polarization across demographics and industries. According to the Ministry of Data and Statistics on Wednesday, total employment reached 28.41 million last month, up 234,000 from a year earlier. This marks the largest increase in 5 months. The growth was driven by the older demographics. Employment for those aged 60 and older surged by 287,000. And due to this, job creation was heavily concentrated in specific service sectors.
Looking at the industries, the health and social welfare service sector saw an increase of 288,000. This marks 14 consecutive months of growth, driven by the expansion of care services and jobs for older adults, as well as an increase in the population of older people, who are the primary recipients of medical services.
Conversely, employment among people aged 15 to 29 dropped by 146,000, driving the unemployment rate among young people to 7.7%, the highest for February in 5 years. This comes as high-skilled technology sectors experience severe contractions. The professional, scientific, and technical services sector lost 105,000 jobs. The information and communication sector shed 42,000. Both represent the steepest decline since current statistical standards were adopted in 2013. Questions arise whether this is due to AI's rise.
Because the decline has only been over the past 3 months, we need to wait and see. We have to monitor whether this is a temporary change or a structural one across industries caused by the introduction of AI.
Traditional industrial pillars also remained weak. Manufacturing lost 16,000 jobs, marking a 20-month streak of decline. The construction sector shed 40,000 jobs, falling for the 22nd consecutive month. Overall, unemployment rate rose by 54,000 to 993,000. This pushed the jobless rate up 0.2 percentage points to 3.4%. 김도현, Arirang News.
Come Saturday this week, BTS takes the stage in downtown Seoul for the first time in 4 years with a free comeback concert that pundits believe signals the start of a larger economic impact. Our Chung Hae-rim reports.
This Saturday, March 21st, Seoul's historic Gwanghwamun Square will turn into a sea of purple as BTS holds a massive free concert celebrating their 5th album Arirang, drawing hundreds of thousands of fans. The economic anticipation is just as staggering as the expected crowd size. According to a report by IBK Investment and Securities, direct revenue from this comeback alone is projected to reach 2.9 trillion Korean won, or almost $2 billion US dollars. This conservative estimate factors in 6 million album sales, 6 million tour attendees, and massive merchandise revenue. The local tourism and retail sectors are already feeling this BTS effect. According to the travel platform Gov't, hotel bookings in the downtown Jongno-gu and Junggu districts for this weekend have skyrocketed by 450% compared to the same period last year. Hotels in the downtown area are nearly fully booked, and international fans are expected to spend immensely during their stay before and after the concert.
If we estimate that about 100,000 of the 200,000 expected attendees are foreign tourists, and the average foreign tourist spends about 2.5 million won, this single event alone could generate a direct economic impact of 250 billion won.
For many fans, the trip goes beyond the concert itself. From K-pop merchandise stores in Myeongdong to local restaurants and cultural hotspots, visitors are actively seeking experiences tied to Korean culture.
Visitors don't just stay around Gwanghwamun. Foreign tourists are increasingly seeking out trendy alleys like Seongsudong. We expect this massive influx to revitalize smaller, local commercial districts across the entire city of Seoul.
The economic impact may extend well beyond a single event, fueling activity across the city's broader tourism ecosystem. Some analysts are already comparing the phenomenon to BTS-Nomics, driven by Taylor Swift, but say BTS could generate an even wider global footprint. This world tour could reach a staggering 40 trillion won, or 269 million US dollars in revenue. Industry insiders also say that a performance in this symbolic space could transform the area into a long-term destination for K-pop fans, similar to the Beatles' Abbey Road in London. As the capital prepares for the historic kickoff, all eyes are locked on Gwanghwamun.
정혜림, 아리랑 뉴스.
And President Lee Jae-myung hopes the upcoming BTS concert will be a meaningful time that shares the charm of Korean culture. In a social media post on Wednesday, he made note of the preparations underway to ensure public safety, including crowd management. He also called for a mature civic consciousness from members of the public and asked them to report any case of ticket scalping. Now, as mentioned earlier, BTS will be performing at Gwanghwamun Square on Saturday for their comeback album, Arirang. Also, ahead of the BTS comeback concert this weekend, the government will raise its terror alert level in central Seoul. The alert will be elevated from attention to caution from Thursday midnight through Saturday. The move comes as hundreds of thousands of fans are expected to gather at Gwanghwamun Square for the much-anticipated performance. The decision also reflects heightened global security concerns. Meanwhile, a Korean flag that sought to keep aflame the spirit of independence has returned home to mark the opening of a special museum. Cha Yoon-kyung has this story.
From Naju, Jeollanam-do province, where General Kim Cheon-il first raised a righteous army during the Imjin War, to the Seokdae-do battlefield in Changheung, the site of the Dongak peasant army's final heroic resistance at the end of the Joseon dynasty. A new museum has been completed, offering a comprehensive look at the storied history of the Namdo Righteous Armies in one location. To mark the museum's opening, the Bulwonbok Taegukgi has returned to its home. Used by Army Commander Go Kwang-sun in Gure during the early 1900s, the flag bears the poignant inscription Bulwonbok, meaning independence shall be restored soon.
This is a site for a living history education, to remember and pass down the noble spirit of righteous soldiers.
Starting with a sculpture depicting the Dangsado Lighthouse Raid, the event that established Wando's Soando Island as one of the three major sites of the anti-Japanese movement, the museum exhibits a total of over 3,000 historical artifacts. Through multi-dimensional exhibits and immersive media, the museum showcases a timeline spanning from the 1555 Ulmyo Webyeon, the first Japanese pirate invasion, through the Imjin and Cheongyu Wars, to the anti-Japanese struggles at the end of the Joseon dynasty. The exterior wall of the Namdo Righteous Army Memorial Museum, named the Space of Metaphor, features a facade panel designed to recreate the metallic roar and shouts of 33,000 Namdo soldiers charging into battle. Integrated with the National Naju Museum, the museum is expected to become a landmark attraction for the year of visiting Naju. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer signed a new defense industry agreement in London on Tuesday to increase the supply of drones and AI technology. During the meeting at 10 Downing Street, President Zelensky labeled the regimes in Russia and Iran, quote, brothers in hatred and, quote, brothers in weapons. He urged Western allies to keep their focus on Ukraine despite the conflict in the Middle East. The signed agreement links Ukraine's drone expertise with the UK's manufacturing strength to boost battlefield capabilities. Prime Minister Starmer stated that the international community must ensure President Vladimir Putin does not benefit from shifting global attention. Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced on Tuesday that security forces discovered the remains of 27 people near the country's southern border following recent bombings in the region by Ecuador. The discovery occurred after Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa ordered strikes against criminal organizations operating in the border region. President Noboa said that the Ecuadorian military targeted drug trafficking hideouts located strictly within Ecuadorian territory. President Petro initially questioned the location of the strikes and later clarified that he did not authorize the bombings on the Colombian side. The The Congo Republic's Electoral Commission on Tuesday declared President Denis Sassou Nguesso the winner of the national election with nearly 95% of the vote. This victory grants the 82-year-old incumbent a new 5-year term, extending his tenure that began in 1979. Official data reported voter turnout at 84%, although opposition groups questioned the figures and boycotted the process due to transparency concerns. Sassou Nguesso's closest challenger received less than 2% of the total vote. Under current constitutional rules, this is expected to be the president's final term in office. In the U.S., a suspected meteor fell over the Cleveland area on Tuesday morning, creating a visible fireball and a sonic boom that shook residential buildings. The American Meteor Society documented sightings of the object from Wisconsin to Maryland at approximately 9 a.m. local time. Experts from the National Weather Service in Cleveland confirmed that they felt vibrations from the atmospheric entry, but found no immediate evidence of fallen debris. While small meteors enter the atmosphere daily, the brightness of this event allowed security cameras to capture the descent in daylight. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
It was a hazy day across the country with reduced visibility. Rain mostly tapered off by the late afternoon, but it'll continue along the south coast and on Jeju-do Island into the evening. Tomorrow we'll see mostly cloudy skies across the country. Meanwhile, large temperature swings are expected. Starting tomorrow, morning temperatures will drop below freezing in inland areas, with Seoul seeing a day-to-night temperature difference of 10 degrees Celsius. So please take care of your health. Seoul will start the day at 1 degree Celsius, Chuncheon at -4 degrees, Daejeon at -1 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 11 degrees, Chuncheon, Daejeon, Jeju all topping out at 12 degrees. From tomorrow, the skies will gradually clear. Mornings will be chilly, dropping below freezing in inland areas. And we'll continue to see typical early spring weather with big temperature swings. That's all for Korea. Here's a look at the weather around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us and thank you for now.
서양 요리는 오직 하나의 주인공을 위한 무대입니다. 완벽하게 계산된 정무라 같죠. 그런데 한식은 밥과 찬이 어우러져 완성되는 한상이 더 중요해요. 마치 자연을 한 폭에 담은 풍경을 같달까요?
요리사인 저도 한국 음식에 대해서 제대로 모르는 거예요.
향이 미쳤다.
저도 맛보고 싶어요. 알면 알수록 과학적이고 이렇게 하면 할수록 제가 더 빠져드는다. 엄청 왔다.
같이 여행을 한번 떠나보시죠.
President Lee Jae-myung's public approval rating makes international headlines as it maintains a tangible upward momentum. With more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Press Perspective for March 18th here in Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. Public polls show the president's policies have been winning him a tangible support base. For more on this, I have Silio Ferretti with French daily Le Croix here in the studio. Silio, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me in.
Celia, we shall start with you. So as I mentioned in the short clip, the foreign media has been highlighting President Lee Jae-myung's approval rating, which has been on the rise in recent days. How is the foreign media explaining this rise?
Well, they are explaining this rise in approval for President Lee Jae-myung through a mix of a strong policy delivery, also a broad-based support, but also a very distinct leadership style. First, on the data itself, his approval rating has climbed to 65%, which brings him back to his highest level since taking office last year. That upward trend is not only just a one-off boom, it's a larger trend over the couple of months in several weeks that really shows an increasing support for the president. Now, in terms of explanation, the most immediate answer is his delivery on policy, and especially on socio-economic policies, livelihood issue. That was really the core of his promises during the campaign and when taking office. And people tend to react quite positively to his policies. His handling of the economy and the real estate issue has been praised by a major party of the population. So again, this is very tangible delivery that really attracts people's support, but what also is particularly interesting, and The Diplomat last week had an article about that, is his very distinct leadership style. He's described as a new kind of president, at least for Korea, someone that is more pragmatic and prioritizes results over political rhetoric. And so he's praised for his administrative efficiency, but also the way he talks to people, the way he communicates. He's seen as someone more humble and close to the people, and I would say his use of social media, especially, he's been commenting on Facebook, on Twitter, X, a lot about his policy and answering people's questions. He's tweeting and posting a lot, which make people feel closer to him, and if there's more a sense of connection, which helps also to make him more popular. So the overall takeaway of this rise in popularity is not just the policy itself, which still plays a big role, but his approach as a president, how he communicates, how he takes the role of a president, that really is changing a lot.
Right. Colin, as Celia just mentioned, The Diplomat, it claims, and I quote, Lee Jae-myung is a new kind of president. This being said, how does his leadership style compare to that of his predecessors?
On that specific respect to being a new kind of president, or at least presenting himself as a new kind of president, that he has in common with, I think, several past presidents of the Republic of Korea. You know, for many of them, it's always year zero. The Republic starts now. Forget all those past presidents. Now is the real democracy, and so on and so forth. We've heard variations of this before. But his actions do reveal a different modus operandi, shall we say, than most South Korean presidents so far. Again, it's early to say, but he does have a high approval rating, as we've discussed, for this point in his presidency. And I think he's keenly aware of the records of the presidents that have come before him. I think he knows what I just said, that, there's a lot of this talk about how, we're starting fresh with me. He knows that. But he also knows that for most presidents of this country, they have big promises, they make big promises, and then the gas runs out of the tank pretty quick, or the air kind of drains out of the balloon, pick your metaphor. And so getting past that sort of rough patch, I think has been a priority for him. And one way has been to keep the promises he's made, to aggressively fulfill or to do actions that are seen as fulfilling what the promises he's made. And so we can point to those and say, look, I've promised this and I'm giving you this. I'm doing the job you elected me to do. And this is a practice he is seen as having honed in his previous political positions, including as the mayor of Seongnam, a city that is seen as having been turned around to a large degree by him, and then being the mayor of Gyeonggi province as well, that surrounds Seoul. So he has a pretty solid record in those two areas, and he's bringing this experience to the top job in Korea. And I think if you look at what he's done so far, there's a case to be made. He is more effective and perhaps more efficient, as Sergio said, more pragmatic than other presidents, than his predecessors have been to this point in the job. But at the same time, many pitfalls lie ahead of him. I myself, during the election, had some reservations about the criminal trials he still is involved in. And there were reasons to sort of have concerns, as there are for every candidate. But so far, so good, I would say. And I think we'll all be paying close attention to see if he can maintain this approval rating, because historically, there's not many instances of that. So I think he faces a stiff challenge, but the attitude he puts forth, he seems up to it so far. But I think, like every Korean president, he has the crowd who want him to fail, and he has his supporters, and we'll see if he can keep the latter group larger than the former group.
Right. This being said, then, according to foreign media, Celia, what are some of the variables that look to perhaps challenge his current approval rating?
Well, indeed, there are several variables that could challenge that momentum of rising popularity. And first is the immediate economic risk, as the world is now embroiled in a war with an oil crisis. Prices are rising in Korea, and the economy is getting slow again. And there are risks that this could damage, even though it's a bit not really the fault of the president, and it's out of his scope of matter because he has no control of what's happening in Iran. But still, it could impact his popularity and the way he's handling those issues. For now, those policies, such as the cap on oil prices, for example, has been quite positively taken by the public, but it's still the war is far from over and the crisis is far from over. And there's not only that, the war in Iran, but there's also some economic pressure, whether it's from the US or maybe even China. The world now is a bit more tricky to navigate. And the way he will maintain that balance and trying to find the best option for Korea will really determine how much he's perceived by the South Korean population. And second, there's also a political balance to have. He has brought support since the election, but he has managed to gather a crowd of both on the progressive side, but also on the more centrist voters. And he will have to find a balance between these two, because maybe during the mandate, the term, some voters maybe on the center will want something different. Maybe people on the more progressive side will want something different. And he will have to find, again, a room to talk to both electorates, find a way to contempt everyone. But that's a hard thing to do. Many presidents have tried that before and many failed. We'll see how we can handle that issue. And finally, there's a broader political environment, even inside his party. We have seen already some discussion, people inside the Democratic Party not always agreeing on the way he rules and the project, the vision he has. We'll see also how he can maintain a unity inside his own party to make his policies, to enforce them, basically, to make them voted in the assembly. And that's also we'll see. It's a test of time, and a term is long. It's a long term, and we will see how he can manage both a balance with the electorate and also inside his own party.
Right, especially keeping in mind that we have local elections slated for this coming June, of course. Colin, let's now move on to the entertainment front. K-pop Demon Hunters made history by winning 2 Academy Awards. Would you say that this achievement was widely anticipated?
In a word, yes. Yes, I would. K-pop Demon Hunters, which won Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song at the Academy Awards, also won a bunch of other awards in the shows leading up to the Oscars, shows seen as bellwethers or predictive of Oscar wins, and some of which we discussed here on this program. And so it was seen as the favorite for that reason. The other candidates did not win many awards, and the nominees, I mean, it was not a terrible slate, although Studio Ghibli didn't have a movie this year. Pixar had 2, one of which was a sequel, the other of which was, I believe, their biggest flop in the history of the studio, so they weren't probably going for it. There were 2 French language movies that looked interesting but didn't have the Netflix or Pixar publicity machine behind them, so they didn't have as much of a chance. And this is something we should remember, that an Academy Award, winning an Academy Award, yes, it's about cinematic quality, but that's not a sufficient condition, sometimes not even necessary. You've got to mobilize the movie. You've got to mobilize fans and supporters within the Academy. You've got to have people in Los Angeles getting the movie to voters, to Academy voters. There are many of them, and you know, it's telling when you reflect on the fact that only this year did a rule pass in the Academy that voters must watch all the nominees before they can vote. And it's not enforceable really anyway. There are measures, but it tells you that people were not necessarily voting because they'd watched all the nominees and were judging on quality objectively. You know, they'd heard good things, they'd felt good things. Maybe they think they're doing something for a good cause. And this has been a pronounced factor in the Academy Awards lately in the last few decades, that a film is not just winning by advancing the art of cinema, but it has to be seen as striking a blow for some kind of social justice, especially, it's the United States of America, especially racial. So think of winners like, Best Picture winners like Crash in 2005 or The Green Book in 2018, movies that are now forgotten, let's face it, but they were seen as being movies that were fighting for a good cause, championing a good social cause. And indeed, K-pop Demon Hunters, whatever its other methods, the co-director Maggie Kang, accepting the award, said, I believe, you know, this is for all Koreans everywhere. She said, we're sorry that it took so long for people who look like us to be on screen. And the discourse after that was amusing because I think she'd forgotten about a little movie called Parasite in 2018, which had nothing but Koreans on screen. Later, there was clarification. I meant animated films, although there are many Asian characters in the films that win Best Animated Feature. So maybe it was too hasty a remark, but that is always a factor in the Oscars. It's not just about the movie, but sort of what the movie is seen as fighting for. And K-pop Demon Hunters was well placed in all these respects.
Right. And beyond the Oscars, Celia, I believe Netflix has announced a sequel to K-pop Demon Hunters. What has been shared about this endeavor thus far?
Indeed, Netflix has announced, confirmed that the sequel to K-pop Demon Hunters is in development, and expectations are extremely high given the scale of the original success. First, this is not just a quick follow-up. The sequel is part of a long-term creative deal with co-director Maggie Kang and Chris Applehans, who will continue to write and direct the movie. That suggests Netflix is investing in a full-fledged franchise, not just a one-off commercial success. In terms of what we know creatively, the team has made it clear they want to expand the universe rather than simply repeat the formula. The original film followed the K-pop trio, Huntrix, Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, balancing global sandstorm with secret demon hunting lives. And now the idea is to go deeper in that world with more storylines and possibly a broader cultural scope. So maybe we'll see it will expand maybe deeper into Korean culture, or maybe to expand to other regions in Asia. And music, of course, again will be central. The first film hit Golden was a global phenomenon, and even reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and winning a Grammy also. And the creative team has hinted that exploring new musical style will be also a part of the development to showcase more facets of Korean music industry. So we might see maybe some older songs or new genre of Korean pop music. What's also striking is the scale of the original success. Over 480 million views, a major award, Oscars won also. And so the pressure is to deliver something as good. It's a hard thing to do. It's something also as meaningful as it was for not only Korean, but also a lot of other people really resonated well with that story. And we'll see if the team managed to double down and make something maybe as good or even bigger than it is, but that's promising.
Right. In the meantime, though, Colin, what lessons should the K-entertainment industry seek to take away from the global advances made by this American production, of course, K-pop Demon Hunters?
There are a few. One of the major ones, I think, is to quote again Maggie Kang, who said this is a victory, or this is for all Koreans everywhere. Well, I would hesitate to take it too much as a victory for Korea because, as I think you've said, this is an American production, K-pop Demon Hunters. And Maggie Kang herself, she's Canadian, I think. She was born here and then grew up in Canada. But most of the people who worked on this film are American. And it's a Hollywood production, a Hollywood studio. And the sensibility is thoroughly American to my mind. The songs are mostly in English. And so watching this, I think one sort of cautionary lesson the Korean entertainment industry could take is that the K sensibility in K-pop, in K-drama, Korean film, whatever it might be, is Korea doesn't have a lock on it. It can be replicated anywhere. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that as that sensibility is developed to appeal to a global audience. It turns out the rest of the globe can also do it in their own way. Not just in the US. I mean, there are K-pop groups which are not Korean. They're not Korean themselves, the members, they don't sing in Korean, but the aesthetic is obviously K-pop, and that's what it's tapping into, and K-pop fans go for it in a way as well. There are successes and failures, but as well, the sort of traits of Korean dramas can be exported. You've seen imitations of Korean drama made elsewhere. There was a Korean drama made in Nigeria. It was not a Korean drama literally, but it took all the tropes of Korean film and just replicated it there. So I think what people like about Korean pop culture is not necessarily producible only in Korea, to reiterate. So maybe we should bear this in mind. If you are sort of aggressively shaping your pop culture, the pop culture of one society, to appeal globally, then by definition, it's going to be something that can be replicated elsewhere. So it's possible to be too broadly appealing, and then Korea could lose the grip, lose the exclusivity on Korean pop culture, which is a strange thing to say, but I think we're seeing it happening already. And K-pop Demon Hunters is just the most vivid, successful example so far.
Right, it has definitely started social commentary to that end. Finally, Celia, let's touch upon an article by the South China Morning Post that asserts that AI adoption may address the economic fallout facing an aging East Asian population. Could you tell us a bit about the article and your takeaways?
Yeah, this article takes a rather nuanced, almost cautiously optimistic view of a major structural challenge in East Asia, aging population and falling birth rate. And the core argument is that while demographics are clearly a drag on growth, with less people, less work, less money for the country, countries like China, South Korea, and Japan may be better positioned than expected to cope with that aging population, thanks to a rapid implementation of AI and robotics into their society. The article highlights that these economies already have a strong industry in that field, in robotics, in AI, in microchips, and for example, South Korea has the highest robot density in the world in the working population, with around 1,000 robots per 10,000 workers. So the idea is that this, as the workforce will shrink in the coming decades, robots and AI will be there to replace not the humans, but the humans that are not there anymore because of the falling birth rate. And that implementation of AI and robots could cushion the impact of the economic impact of the falling birth rate and the shrinking of the population. Some experts think it could be even like 10% less strong of a loss of GDP, from like 16% to only 6% loss of GDP. But that's the key of the article also, is like AI is not the silver bullet. It will not solve on its own the demographic problem. It's just a fix, a temporary fix to cushion again this economic impact, but it will not make people have more kids. It will not maybe transform the society in a way that people will be more incentivized to make more kids and have a bigger family. So it's a good advantage for now, but the countries like China, Korea, and Japan should not rely only on AI and robots for their future of economy. Still, if this technology is here, it's gonna lessen the economic downgrade, but it will not stop it.
Right. Colin, how does AI adoption, do you suppose, look to affect South Korea's work environment?
Yes, a couple of years ago, I wrote in a book that Koreans have more of an optimistic view of the future than Americans. And I've been asked about that many times. Like, people don't quite buy it. And they ask what I mean by that. And I say, thinking about it, even while answering these questions, I realized it's about technology. It's about the attitude toward technology. And for a long time, Koreans have been sort of technophilic, more than that, pro-technology in an instinctive way, I would say. A new technology comes out, people are on it, almost uncritically in most cases. And maybe Americans are too wary of especially a technology like AI. Koreans are not. You know, you'll hear variations on this idea. AI is the future. People say it not as if they'd come to that conclusion themselves, but just, it's what people are saying. We all think it's the future, so let's get on it. And, you know, the result of that mindset is not always productive. One example, let me only name the AI textbook fiasco last year, which cost, I believe, in the end, something like the equivalent of $850 million to no result. I mean, to no result. It caused only problems. And I think we'll see more versions of that in the immediate future, just plunging into the pool and realizing, wait, we can't swim in this. And in workplaces too, I think in many Korean companies, there's going to be a lot of, probably is right now, a lot of, we're going fully AI. We're going to AI-ify everything without really a solid plan and without necessarily a pressing need for it. And in many cases, I'm sure it'll have to be walked back, these AI plans. It's like, okay, well, that was bad, we'll try again, you know. And it's a different approach. So certainly in the US, there's going to be maybe too slow adoption of artificial intelligence in some sectors. Here, it'll almost certainly be too fast. And I think people are prepared for that in a sense psychologically. You've just got to go for it, let the chips fall where they may. But I think it will be disruptive and not necessarily only in the positive Silicon Valley sense. But, you know, I think people in many sort of tech sectors in Korea are in for a bit of a rough ride in the next few years as the management or the level above that gets a little too gung-ho, not wanting to fall behind. Another big concern in Korea, you don't want to fall behind, and just implements the technology, whatever technology comes down the pike. And AI especially, with the sort of sense that it can replace workers, I think a lot of it's not quite there. But that's not necessarily an issue for those who want to be on the vanguard as much as possible. So, you know, hold on to your hats, folks.
All right, a lot of trial and error in the future then. All right, Colin, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Celia, thank you very much for your insights. Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Cafes. Step 1. Find a seat. Before ordering, find a seat. Laptop ID, smart